Survival isn't always triumph. Sometimes it's just what you do, because dying takes more effort than living. 6 years, 2 months, 17 days. That's how long I was a prisoner of war in North Vietnam. Most of it in Hoa Lo prison. The Hanoi Hilton, we called it. Dark humor. The kind you develop when humor is the only thing keeping you sane. My name is Lieutenant Commander James Stockton, Navy pilot, F-4 Phantom. Shot down on October 12th, 1967, about 40 miles north of Hanoi. Surface-to-air missile got us during a bombing run. My RIO, Radar Intercept Officer, Lieutenant Paul Henderson, he didn't make it out of the aircraft. I ejected, parachuted down into North Vietnam, into enemy territory, into captivity. I was 32 years old, from San Diego, wife and 2 kids back home. Thought I'd be gone for a year. Maybe 18 months. Standard combat tour. Come home. Resume my life. I came home in March 1973. Operation Homecoming. Part of the first group released after the Paris Peace Accords. 6 years older. 6 years thinner. 6 years of torture and isolation and degradation. 6 years that took everything I was and replaced it with something else. Something harder. Something that could survive but couldn't quite remember how to live. People want to hear about the Hanoi Hilton, want to know what it was like, want the dramatic stories of resistance and torture and heroism, want to hear that we suffered nobly, that we maintained honor, that we came home whole. Some of that's true. We did resist. We did maintain military discipline as best we could. We did survive with our dignity mostly intact. But the reality is uglier than the stories. The reality is that survival in a place like that requires you to become someone different, someone capable of enduring things you didn't know humans could endure, someone who can live in a 6-by-6 cell for years and not completely lose their mind. You don't come back from that unchanged. You don't just shake it off and return to normal life. The person who got shot down in 1967 died in that prison. What came home in 1973 was something else, something that looked like him but wasn't. The torture was bad. The isolation was worse. But the worst part was realizing that even after you're free, even after you're home, you're still in that cell, still in the Hanoi Hilton, still a prisoner. Some prisons have walls and guards and torture rooms. Others are just memories that won't let you go. I've been home for 9 years, free for 9 years, living in America where I can do whatever I want, go wherever I want, say whatever I want. But I'm not free. Not really. Part of me is still in that cell in Hanoi, still hearing the guards coming, still waiting for the next interrogation, still trying to survive one more day. Some things you don't come back from. Some experiences change you at such a fundamental level that the person you were before just stops existing. The Hanoi Hilton did that to me, to all of us. We survived, but survival isn't the same as winning. Sometimes it's just the punishment for being harder to kill than the other guy. October 12th, 1967. The day my life divided into before and after. We were on a bombing run. Standard Alpha strike against a target near Hanoi. The SAM came out of nowhere, surface-to-air missile. 1 second, we were lining up our bombing run. The next second, the proximity warning was screaming and there was an explosion and the aircraft was breaking apart. Eject! 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 I was shouting to Henderson. I pulled the handle. The canopy blew. The rocket motor fired. I was out of the aircraft, tumbling through the air. Deployed the chute. Started floating down toward North Vietnam. Henderson's chute never opened. I saw his aircraft seat fall, just fall, tumbling, no parachute. He hit the ground somewhere in the jungle below. Good man, good officer, dead before I even landed. I touched down in a rice paddy. Militia was on me within minutes. Farmers with rifles, local defense forces. They weren't gentle, beating me with rifle butts, stripping my flight suit, taking everything except my underwear. They marched me to a village. More beating, more crowds. People who'd lost family members to American bombs. People who wanted revenge. I don't blame them. Their anger made sense. I'd been dropping bombs on their country. But understanding their anger didn't make the beating hurt less. They trucked me to Hanoi, to Hoa Lo Prison, the Hanoi Hilton, the main POW facility, where I'd spend the next 6 years. First came processing, strip search, medical examination, barely, photographs, interrogation. The interrogation was my introduction to what the next 6 years would be like. You will confess your crimes against the Vietnamese people, the interrogator said. His English was good, educated, probably trained in the Soviet Union. Name, rank, service number, date of birth, I responded. The code of conduct. That's all we're required to give. He smiled, not a friendly smile. You will learn that we have ways of obtaining cooperation. They took me to a room. Small, concrete floor, single bulb hanging from the ceiling. This would become familiar. I'd spend a lot of time in rooms like this. They put me in ropes. That's what we called it later. The torture technique they used most often. They'd bind your arms behind your back, shoulders pulled back until they nearly dislocated, cut off circulation. Leave you like that for hours. The pain is indescribable. Your shoulders scream. Your hands go numb. You lose feeling in your arms. You think you're going to die or pass out. You want to pass out, but you don't. You just endure. They wanted a confession, a statement denouncing American aggression, a propaganda piece they could use. I refused. For hours, through the pain, through the threats, through everything. Eventually, they took me down, threw me in a cell, 6 feet by 6 feet, concrete walls, wooden plank for a bed, bucket for a toilet, one small window high up that I couldn't reach. This was home now. This cell. For however long they kept me. I'd been a prisoner for maybe 6 hours. Already I'd been beaten, tortured, degraded. Already I understood that the next however long was going to be worse than anything I'd experienced. Already I was calculating how long I could resist, how much I could endure, what I was willing to die for and what I wasn't. Already the person I'd been was starting to disappear, starting to be replaced by whoever I'd need to become to survive this. The door slammed shut. The lock turned. I was alone in the dark, and that's when the real torture started. The isolation, the silence, the endless hours with nothing but your own thoughts. 6 years of that. 6 years. I didn't know that yet. Didn't know I wouldn't see freedom until 1973. Didn't know how long I'd have to endure. Maybe that was a mercy. If I'd known it would be 6 years, I might not have survived the first week. The first year was the hardest, learning the rules, learning how to survive, learning what you could resist and what you couldn't. They tortured us regularly. The ropes were standard, but they had other techniques. Strappado, hanging by your arms from the ceiling. Beatings with rubber hoses that didn't leave visible marks. The fan belt, strapping you in irons and leaving you for days. The worst was the rope torture combined with isolation and sleep deprivation. They'd torture you, throw you back in your cell, let you start to recover, then come get you again. Day after day, week after week, breaking you down until you'd sign whatever they wanted. Most of us broke eventually. We tried to resist, tried to maintain the code of conduct, tried to hold out, but they had time. They had patience. They had no oversight. They could do whatever they wanted to us, and nobody would stop them. I held out for 3 weeks once. 3 weeks of daily torture sessions. 3 weeks of rope torture and beatings and psychological pressure. Then I signed a confession. Crimes against the Vietnamese people. Propaganda bullshit that they'd use for their domestic audience. I felt like I'd failed. Failed the code of conduct. Failed my country. Failed myself. The guilt was crushing. But the senior officers, We'd developed a communication system using taps on the walls, a code based on a matrix. They got word to me. You did your best. Everyone has a breaking point. Resist as long as you can, then do what you have to do to survive. That became the unofficial policy. Resist as long as possible. Don't volunteer anything. Make them work for it. But when you reach your breaking point, when continuing to resist means death or permanent injury, then do what you have to do to survive. Survival over heroism. Because dead heroes don't come home. The isolation was constant. We were kept in small cells, sometimes alone, sometimes with a roommate. The guards were brutal about enforcing silence. If they caught you communicating, you'd get tortured. But we communicated anyway. The tap code, coughs, hand signals when we were outside. We maintained military discipline, chain of command. We looked after each other as best we could. We had this thing we'd do. When someone was being tortured, we'd hear the screams, hear them echoing through the prison, and we'd tap messages on the walls. GBU, God bless you. You are in our prayer. You are in our prayers. Little messages to let the guy being tortured know he wasn't alone. That mattered more than you can imagine. Knowing your fellow prisoners were thinking about you, supporting you, maintaining connection despite the isolation. The food was terrible, rice and vegetable soup, sometimes with a piece of pork fat floating in it if we were lucky, bread that was more dirt than flour. We were all losing weight, getting weaker, developing diseases from malnutrition. I lost 60 pounds in the first year. 6'2", went from 185 pounds to 125. Dysentery was constant. Infections, skin diseases, dental problems. We had no medical care except what the camp doctor provided, which was minimal and grudging. Some men died. Injuries from ejection, diseases, torture that went too far. We'd hear about it through the tap code. Another name added to the list of those who wouldn't make it home. Commander Porter died in 1968. Heart attack during torture. He was 41, left a wife and 3 kids. We tapped his name through the prison. Moment of silence. Then back to survival. Because survival was all we had. Get through today. Make it to tomorrow. Maintain hope that eventually somehow this would end and we'd go home. But hope is hard to maintain when every day is the same, when every day brings more torture, more isolation, more degradation, when years pass and nothing changes except you get thinner and weaker and more broken. The tap code messages kept us going. GN, good night. GM, good morning. SYC, oh shit, you're caught, when someone was being taken for torture. Little moments of humanity in the inhumanity. We told jokes through the walls, shared memories, talked about our families, our lives before, our plans for after. Maintained the fiction that there would be an after. Some guys lost it, couldn't handle the isolation and torture, would break down, collaborate with the guards. We didn't hate them for it. We understood. Everyone has a breaking point. Everyone breaks eventually. The key was to maintain enough of yourself that when you did break, you could come back, could rebuild, could resist again the next time. That was survival in the Hanoi Hilton, not heroic resistance, just grinding, day by day, survival, taking the torture, recovering, getting tortured again, communicating through walls, maintaining hope through darkness, for 6 years. By 1970, I'd been a prisoner for 3 years. 3 years of torture and isolation and malnutrition. 3 years of the same concrete cell. 3 years of the same routine. Wake up, eat rice soup, sit in your cell, endure whatever torture they had planned that day. Back to the cell, sleep, repeat. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. We marked time by events. That was before the Christmas bombing. That was after Johnson announced he wouldn't run again. News would filter in through new shoot-downs, new prisoners who brought information from the outside world. The war was going badly for America. We knew that. The guards told us constantly, showed us propaganda about anti-war protests, about American casualties, about how we were losing, part of their psychological warfare. Make us believe we'd been abandoned, that America didn't care about us, that we'd rot in these cells forever. Some guys believed it, lost hope, gave up, became what we called zombies. Men who were still alive but had stopped fighting, stopped resisting, just existed. I came close to it myself several times, times when the torture was too much, when the isolation was overwhelming, when I couldn't remember why I was resisting anymore, when giving up seemed easier than continuing to fight. The tap code saved me. Messages from other prisoners. HGU, hang in there, guy. STO, survival is tough and outstanding. CCTS, can't continue to suffer? Keep going. We supported each other. Invisible support through concrete walls. But real. More real than anything else in that place. 4 years in. My cellmate that year was Lieutenant Williams, Air Force pilot. Shot down in 1970. Young guy, 25. Having a hard time with the torture. We'd talk at night, whispering, risking punishment. I'd tell him about my family, my kids. Try to give him something to hold on to. How do you do it? He asked one night. How do you keep going? I didn't have a good answer. You just do. 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time. You survive this hour, then the next hour, then the next. What if I can't? Then you can't. But you're still alive right now. So you must be able to. Simple logic. But in the Hanoi Hilton, simple was all we had. Williams made it. Came home in 1973 with the rest of us. Last I heard, he was doing okay. Better than some. Worse than others. That was the thing about the Hanoi Hilton. We all survived, those of us who made it out. But we all survived differently. Some came home ready to rebuild. Some came home broken. Most came home somewhere in between. I came home angry. Angry at the Vietnamese, which I understood. Angry at the American government for the way the war was fought. Angry at the anti-war movement for what felt like betrayal. Angry at everyone and everything, but mostly angry at myself for breaking, for signing confessions, for all the times I'd compromised and collaborated to survive, for not being stronger, for not resisting better. The code of conduct says you resist to the utmost. I hadn't. None of us had. We'd all broken, all compromised, all survived by becoming less than what we'd been. And that guilt, that sense of failure, that lived with us long after we came home. December 1972, the Christmas bombing, Operation Linebacker 2. Nixon ordered massive bombing raids on Hanoi, B-52s, the biggest air campaign of the war. We could hear it, feel it. The prison shook with the explosions, bombs falling all over Hanoi, all over the area around the prison. We thought we might die from our own bombs, killed by American ordnance while prisoners in Hanoi. Ironic, terrible, but also hopeful, because massive bombing meant something was happening, meant the war was reaching some kind of climax, meant maybe, possibly, this might end soon. The guards were terrified, running around, unsure what to do with us. Some wanted to kill us, some wanted to move us, some wanted to use us as human shields, but they didn't do any of that. They just left us in our cells while Hanoi burned, while American bombs fell, while the war came to the capital. For 11 days, the bombing continued. 11 days of explosions and fear and strange hope. Hope that this meant something, that this meant the end. January 1973. We got word. Peace talks were succeeding, ceasefire coming, POW release being negotiated. We didn't believe it at first. Too many false hopes over the years. Too many times we'd heard rumors of release that came to nothing. But this time it was real. January 27th, ceasefire signed. Paris Peace Accords, POW release scheduled. February 12th, 1973, Operation Homecoming began. First group of prisoners of war released. I wasn't in that group. Had to wait. March 14th, 1973. My turn. They came to my cell. Told me to get ready. I was going home. 6 years, 5 months, 2 days, finally over, finally free. We were trucked to the airport, put on planes, C-141 Starlifters, American aircraft, American crews, American soil beneath us when we landed in the Philippines. I should have felt relief, joy, triumph. We'd survived. We were free. We were going home. I felt numb, disconnected, like it wasn't real, like it was another trick, another psychological game the Vietnamese were playing. Even when I stepped off the plane in the Philippines, even when I was processed, even when they gave me a uniform and a steak dinner and a phone call home, even then, part of me was still in that cell, still waiting for the guards, still expecting this to be taken away. I called my wife, heard her voice for the first time in 6 years. She was crying. I was crying. Our kids were in the background. Everyone crying. I'm coming home, I told her. It's over. I'm coming home. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't quite true. I was coming home. But it wasn't over. Would never be over. The Hanoi Hilton was coming home with me. In my head, in my memories, in the person I'd become to survive. The plane ride back to the States was surreal. Celebrations, reunions, media coverage. We were heroes. Surviving prisoners of war. Symbols of American endurance. We smiled for the cameras, said we were fine, said we were happy to be home, said what everyone wanted to hear. But inside, most of us were screaming, still in those cells, still being tortured, still trying to survive one more day. Freedom doesn't end captivity. Not really. Not when the captivity is in your head. I'm recording this in 1982. 9 years since I came home. 9 years of freedom. 9 years of trying to rebuild a life. Some days are better than others. Some days I can almost forget. Almost feel normal. Almost believe I'm just a regular person living a regular life. Other days I'm back in that cell, back in the ropes, back in the torture room, back in the Hanoi Hilton, even though I'm physically in San Diego. The nightmares are constant, every night. The guards coming, the torture starting, the endless isolation. I wake up reaching for walls that aren't there, listening for tap codes in the silence. My wife tries to understand. God bless her, she tries. But how can she? She wasn't there, didn't experience it. Can't comprehend what it was like to spend 6 years in a 6-by-6 cell. Our relationship isn't what it was. We're strangers now. The man she married died in Vietnam. The man who came home looks like him, but isn't him. She knows it. I know it. We try to pretend otherwise. Our kids are grown now. They were 8 and 10 when I was shot down. They're 14 and 16 now. I missed 6 years of their lives. 6 years of birthdays and school plays and growing up. That time is just gone. Can't get it back. They look at me like I'm a stranger. And I am. I don't know them. They don't know me. We're trying to build relationships, but it's hard when you're starting from nothing. I tried going back to flying. The Navy was supportive. Wanted POWs back in the cockpit. Wanted to show that we were still capable. Still warriors. I couldn't do it. Got in the cockpit of an F-4 and had a complete panic attack. All I could think about was ejecting, about parachuting into enemy territory, about being captured again. So flying is gone. The thing I loved, the thing I was good at, Gone because I can't separate it from the trauma. I work a desk job now. Training command. Teaching young pilots. Safe work. Important work. But not what I wanted to be doing with my life. The POW community helps. We have reunions. Share stories. Support each other. Men who understand what it was like because they were there. Who don't need explanations because they lived it. We talk about survival, about resistance, about the compromises we made, about the guilt we carry. Some guys are doing well, found ways to integrate their experience, built successful lives, moved forward. Others aren't, destroyed by what happened to them, broken by the torture and isolation, unable to function in normal society. Most of us are somewhere in between. Functional but damaged, living but not thriving, surviving but not winning. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, depression, anxiety disorder. They have names for what's wrong with me now. Labels, treatment plans, medications. None of it brings back the 6 years I lost. None of it erases the torture. None of it makes the nightmares stop. Lieutenant Williams, my old cellmate, he killed himself in 1978, 5 years after coming home. Couldn't handle civilian life. Couldn't escape the Hanoi Hilton in his head. I understood. God help me. I understood completely. There were times I thought about it. Times when living felt harder than dying. Times when the memories were too much. But I didn't. For my family. For my fellow POWs who didn't make it home. For some sense of obligation to keep going. Not because I'm strong, not because I'm brave, just because dying takes more effort than living. Same reason I survived the Hanoi Hilton. Same reason I'm surviving now. People treat us like heroes. Thank us for our service. Thank us for our sacrifice. They see the medals and the recognition and think we're special. We're not. We're just men who got shot down and survived captivity. Men who were tortured and didn't die. Men who endured because the alternative was dying. That's not heroism. That's just not dying. There's a difference. The real heroism was the men who died in captivity. The men who resisted until they couldn't resist anymore. The men who maintained their humanity in an inhumane place. The rest of us, we just survived, made compromises, broke, did what we had to do to come home. And we live with that. The knowledge of what we did, what we signed, what we said, the propaganda confessions, the compromises. The code of conduct says resist to the utmost. We tried. We really tried. But the utmost turned out to be less than we'd hoped, less than we'd expected, less than we'd promised ourselves. And that failure, even though it was inevitable, even though everyone breaks eventually, that lives with us, that eats at us, that reminds us every day that we weren't as strong as we thought we'd be. 6 years, 5 months, 2 days in the Hanoi Hilton. 9 years of freedom since then. 9 years trying to forget, trying to move on, trying to rebuild. But you can't rebuild what was destroyed. You can only build something new, something different, something that incorporates the damage instead of hiding it. I'm not the man I was before I was shot down. That man died in Horlow prison, died in the torture rooms and isolation cells and years of degradation. What came home in 1973 was someone else, someone harder, someone who knows what humans can endure, someone who knows what survival really costs. Survival isn't triumph. It's just what you do because dying takes more effort. That's what I learned in the Hanoi Hilton. That's what I carry with me every day. That's what I'll carry until I die. We survived. We came home. We were free. But part of us is still there. Still in those cells. Still hearing the guards. Still waiting for the next torture session. Still tapping messages on walls to men who aren't there anymore. Some prisons are physical, those you can escape when the doors open. Others are mental, those you carry with you forever. I've been home for 9 years, free for 9 years, but I'm still a prisoner, still in the Hanoi Hilton, still trying to survive one more day. The walls are in my head now. The guards are memories. The torture is psychological instead of physical, but it's still prison, still captivity, still the same grinding day-by-day survival, just with better food and the illusion of freedom. They released me in 1973, opened the doors, put me on a plane, sent me home. But they never really let me go, never released the prisoner in my head, never freed me from what I'd become to survive. That prisoner is still there, still in that 6-by-6 cell, still waiting, still enduring, still surviving because dying takes more effort than living. And he'll be there until I die, until this body stops functioning, until survival finally becomes harder than dying. That's what the Hanoi Hilton did to me, to all of us. It gave us our lives back, but it kept our souls. And you can't negotiate for the return of something that's already gone.